Yo, what's up? I'm Isaac from Lovable, and this is a tutorial on how you can build full-stack web apps using Lovable without writing a single line of code. So you don't have to have any technical expertise to watch this tutorial and to use Lovable. And I will be going through everything step by step, and I will kind of be giving you guys my thought process. So I think the best way for me to teach you guys Lovable is just by building a pretty complex application and then just allowing you guys to follow me along the way. So I will be going over some basic web concepts as well. If you do have technical expertise, you can just skip over those YouTube chapters, but let's get started. So for the web app, I'm thinking that I'm gonna make an AI enhanced sort of a journaling web app. So you will be able to like kind of log how your days have went, and then you will be able to chat with an AI who will essentially have that context and then be able to kind of provide you with some tips and tricks. So I've started off by just making a basic design of the web app. So I like to use this website called excollidraw.com. You can also just use Figma for this. So here we have the basic design. So we have a landing page that all of the visitors will start at, and then they will have to press on get started, and then they will get to the main web app. And this looks kind of messy, but what we have here is a navigation bar. We can go back to the landing page, then we can go to the chat page, then we can log out, and then we can also create a new journal. And essentially this is how the journal segment will look like. So you can kind of write here how your day has been, and then you can also rate your kind of energy level during the day and also your productivity score out of 10. And then we also have the chat page right here. So it's a pretty simple web app, but I believe it will kind of demonstrate a lot of the features of Lovable. So what I'm gonna do now is that I'm just gonna take a screenshot of every single page. Of course, this page quite here is pretty basic. So I'm just gonna allow the AI to kind of change the landing page however the AI would like to do it, because it's kind of just boilerplate. I won't be including anything special in the landing page. So I think the Lovable AI can just go ahead and kind of change the landing page however Lovable AI would like. So I'm just gonna take a screenshot of every single page. Now you could just take one big screenshot, but it's actually better to take individual screenshots because it allows the AI to kind of focus in on each part individually. If you just take one screenshot, then the quality of the image won't be as good. So this is better practice. And then I'm just gonna write kind of the features that I want. So I want your link tool that allows the user to log how their day has been, and then chat with an AI that will have all of the logs. So we can now specify kind of how the pages will look like. So we will have a landing page with a get started button, takes the user to the main app where we will have sidebar with the previous journal entries and a new journal button, and then we will also have chat page, and then we can also add some notes. So we have 3 input fields here. So we have the how was your day input field, productivity, and then also the energy. And we can also use to make it more clear for the Lovable AI that the user can select out of 10 to rate their day. And then also at the end of the prompt, and this is important, let's just add, let's start with the UI, then I will add the Supabase backend. So Supabase will be kind of the cloud provider or the backend provider that we will use to actually store user data. And we kind of want to make that clear to the AI, just to give some additional context, that to start off, we will just do the UI and then we will add Supabase. And then once the UI is like finished and we have like a basic skeleton of the web app, we can press this Supabase button right there and we will actually connect a backend such that we can store user information and also do some of the other cool AI features as well. Because that also has to be ran on the backend. So we see here that Lovable AI is writing the code, and you don't have to worry about code if you're non-technical. And if you do know how to program, it can be fun just to read this code while it's writing it, but you really don't have to look at the code to be able to build with the Lovable. So right now it's spinning up the preview, and here we have it. So if I press on get started, we'll get to the main app. Perfect. And then we can also navigate using this button right here, which is kind of like an inbuilt navigation within Lovable. So we have our entry right here. We can describe our day, and we can also rate our energy level and our productivity level, and then we can also save our entry. Of course, it won't work right now because we have just made the UI, and then we also have this chat thing. And it has also specified that the chat integration will come soon. So that looks good. So I now think it's time to implement the backend. So just to give some context, right now we only have a front end. So we have our website right here. And each time you go on a website on the web, you're essentially temporarily downloading the front end of the website. So each time you go on the URL, like this one right here, or like the Lovable URL, you're downloading the UI such that you can actually interact with the UI. But then you also have the backend where the user information is stored and kind of dynamic data is stored in the backend. And the backend is essentially just a different computer that is not your own computer. And it's also called like a server. So on the front end, we might have these input fields like so, and then we might have like a button and all of that. And you can even make like fully fledged games using only the front end of a web app. But if you actually want to store data and if you want to make like a multiplayer game, then you need a backend, you need a server. And in our case, we want to implement sign up and login, and we want to store the user's journal entries inside of the server such that when the user comes on, for example, his phone, for instance, the data will actually be retained and saved. So we will have a database like that, and then the database will kind of be called within our front end such that we can get the data. And of course, Lovable will be doing all of this for us. I just think it's good to get some context and kind of an overview of what is going on. So the data will be coming like back and forth from the front end and from the database. So if we go back over to Lovable now and we press this Supabase button, we can actually connect Supabase to our front end. And Supabase, as I mentioned, is the database we will be using. And it is the database that Lovable has native support for. So you will have to create a Supabase account if you haven't done that. But in my case, I've already done that. And I've also created an organization within Supabase, which you also have to do. And then once you have this organization, you can press on create new project. So I'm just going to name it AI Enhanced Journaling App. And then I'm just going to create a password. And then we can also select the location of our server. In my case, it doesn't really matter. This is just an example. But you do want the location of the server to be close to where your actual users are, right? So your users are going to be on the front end, and then the front end is going to communicate with the server. So if the server is closer to the users, then this communication will happen faster. But of course, now, modern applications, it already happens so quickly, so it doesn't matter that much. But yeah, it's just some additional context. And we see that it's setting up our project right now, Supabase, and we just have to wait for this to finish loading, and then we will be able to finish connecting it. And there we go. Now it has finished loading, and now we should be able to go back to Lovable here and press on the Supabase button, and then we can see our project right here. And we can press on that and then press connect. And now Lovable is going to connect to this Supabase project. And while it's connecting, because what we want to do now is implement authentication, we can go into the authentication settings on Supabase, and we can actually see our providers. So I'm going to go over to authentication and then providers. And then we can see that we have email provider enabled. And that's kind of the default authentication method. And it's the one that we're going to be using here. But I'm actually going to be turning off this thing right here on the email authentication provider. And this setting makes it such that we have to confirm our email address each time we make an account with Supabase. And that's pretty annoying now, especially when we're developing. So I'm just gonna turn that off such that we can just create a bunch of accounts without having to verify the email addresses. And then I'm just gonna save that, and now it's saved. And now, now this thing is finished. So that's also another tip, like while you're waiting for Lovable to do something, you can do other things while waiting, just to be more productive. And in our case, we have finished the Supabase connection now, and we also have some kind of tips on what we can do with Supabase. We can create user accounts, we can store data, and we can even do some more advanced stuff like edge functions, which I will explain what they are later on. We will actually be using those for some of the functionality within our app. But now we want to create a sort of sign up page. So I'm just gonna write add sign up and login, like so. And the thing that we want to happen now is that when you press on get started, you get redirected to the login page. And then you can also go to the sign up page. As you can see here, Lovable is writing this SQL code. So essentially what SQL is that it's a specific programming language for writing the structure of a database, kind of. So the schema of a database. And we can just press on apply changes down here, and it will apply these database changes. And we should also see these changes in Supabase. So if we go over to database, we can visualize the changes, and then we can also go over here to table editor and see the profiles table that Lovable will now have created. So we can see that we have the ID, the username, the avatar URL, and we have a bunch of information here that each user kind of can have. And now once we have this schema applied, and once Lovable has set up login, yeah, we can just press on that button and we get the sign up page. And let's just go over there to sign up. So we were at the login page, and then let's just write test@gmail.com. And then let's just create a basic password like so. And now we're logged in, perfect. And I believe this is the logout button. I might be wrong. Yeah, logged out successfully. Yeah, that was the logout button. So now we should be able to log in again, like so, yes. All right, so now we want to be able to save a journal entry. So I'm just gonna ask Lovable to add that functionality. And now make it such that we can add journal entry to the database when we press save entry. All right, so now the migration is done. The migration is kind of, that's what it's called when you add kind of an update to your SQL schema, so your database schema. But now I'm just gonna write some entries. So my day has been very nice. And let's just change this. When I press save entry, thing happens. Make it such that entry is saved and displayed in the sidebar. So we kind of want the entry to, yeah, be displayed over there. And then we also have to implement the chat functionality, which I think will be very fun. All right, so let's see here. I have had a good day. Save entry. Entry failed. Okay, let's try to fix this. So sometimes you might get errors. In that case, you can just press the try to fix button. All right, so let's see now. Good. Save entry. There we go. So now we have our entry right here. Let's try to add a new one. So new entry. It has been great. Save entry. There we go. This looks good. Now it has updated the code. Here's another thing that it's kind of important to go over. So it says the journal entry component is getting quite long, over 100 lines. We should consider refactoring it into smaller components in the future for better maintainability. So this is something that we have added to the Lovable AI, that sometimes it will tell us that we can refactor certain components. And essentially components are just pieces of code, right? So to make the code more scalable, it is often suggested that you shouldn't have a bunch of lines in the same files. You should kind of make different files and different components to keep things scalable. So when this occurs in the chat, it's recommended to let the AI refactor it. But let's first use test out the feature. So if I go over here, yeah, you can see it shows kind of the entry. And then if we go and we change this to bad and then update entry, there we go, it updates. Perfect. And now we can also tell it to refactor. So yes, you can go ahead and refactor the component. All right, let's now begin to work on the chat portion of this web app. So for this, let's make the chat page now. For the chat page, I want to be able to chat with an AI from OpenAI. Let's do GPT-4. And I want the AI to have the context of all of my journals. So include the journals within the prompt to GPT-4 by retrieving them from the database. We want ChatGPT, essentially, GPT-4, to be able to chat with us, but we also want to retrieve the journals that we have and include those in the prompt. You can go back to Excalidraw just to kind of get an overview of this. So right now, we're going to be writing an edge function. And that was the thing that I talked about before. And essentially, an edge function is just a fancy way for cloud providers, such as Supabase, to name an endpoint. They do have some differences. They're kind of the location that they're placed at. But essentially, it's just an endpoint. And what is an endpoint? An endpoint is kind of a script or a function of code that is ran on the server rather than on the website, rather on the front end, rather on like the user's PC, it's run on the server. The reason why we want to run stuff on the server could be because it's computationally expensive, right? or it could be because the code is sensitive. And in our case, the code is sensitive. We want to make a request to OpenAI. And to make a request to OpenAI, we need an OpenAI API key. We need the API key that we have in our OpenAI dashboard. And OpenAI will use this API key to identify that I am making the request. And I don't want other people to have this API key, because then other people can make a bunch of requests using my API key, and that might cost me a lot of money. So we want to store our API key on the backend. So we'll have to make an OpenAI account. So I'm just gonna press on start building right here. And then I'm gonna go over to the dashboard. And then I'm gonna go over to API keys. And then I'm just gonna create an API key for our journaling app, like so. Create secret key. And then I'm gonna copy it. And of course, this key is very secret. And you don't wanna leak this or put this in the chat or in the front end. Instead, we have this input field right here that the AI will have kind of displayed to us, and we can just copy it within this input field and press on save. By the way, we have also changed the UI for this little add API key thing. So instead of it being an input field, it's just a button that you press and then an input field will pop up. So now we can just write something like hello. I'm just gonna send this, and let's see, we got an error. So I'm just gonna try to press on try to fix, like so. All right, so now it seems like it has created the edge function. So let's just type hello, and we still get the error. So let's just say, I have pasted in the key. Can you make the chat functionality work? Let's just do that. All right, so let's try writing now, hello, and we still get the error. Okay, let's try again. Let's include this context. So I'm just gonna open up the error, and then I'm just gonna write this, and I'm just gonna write, we still get the error when we send a message. It seems like we are not invoking the edge function. All right, let's see, let's try now. All right, maybe it's working. All right, it seems like it worked. Let's try to add some entries to see if it's actually tracking the entries. So let's just create a new journal entry, and let's just write, man, this has been such a great day, exclamation mark. And then just do like max, and then we can just tell the AI, how has my day been, question mark. And if it's able to answer this, okay, it seems like it doesn't know. So let's just write, make sure that the AI has all of the journal entries in its context window. I went on a really nice walk. Let's write that. It was a bad day. I broke my leg on the walk I took yesterday. No, and let's just do low energy levels. Okay, man, I feel great now. My leg is working again. So that was a quick recovery. Let's give this a try. So, hello, do you know how my days have been? It's gonna be so confused if it has this context yesterday. Okay, let's write another prompt. So, make sure that all of the journal entries are included in the prompt and use GPT-4o. My day has been great because I just won a race against Turtle. So it's not actually seeing any of the journal entries. So let's just take a screenshot of this and tell the AI that the AI does not seem to know of my journal entries. We have to include the text and the productivity level and the G level individually for it to work, right? In the prompt. Note that you sometimes can get stuck like this, and then it's important to have grit and to be persistent. You also want to be very clear with the behavior that you want to see from the web app. The important part is just that you describe clearly the behavior that you want to see from the web app, and then you describe the behavior that you're actually seeing and experiencing. Now, when using the OpenAI API, it is also very important to use an up-to-date model. And in my case, I want to use the GPT-4o model, as that is one of the best models and also one of the most popular. And it supports vision. So I would recommend always stating to Lovable that you want to use GPT-4o if you're using OpenAI. So let's just see if this works. If that doesn't work, we can send over that prompt. So let's say hello. All right, there we go. Okay, now it's telling me that, you know, my journal entries have been a bit of a roller coaster. So I noticed a dramatic shift from breaking your leg, feeling down with low energy and productivity, to feeling great and even winning a race as the day progressed. It's quite remarkable how you navigated through such different states of being in a single day. Another thing to note here is that the formatting is a bit off. In this case, I kind of know what the problem is, so we need to make this markdown, which is specific format. So let's see. So if I write hello, I believe now that that the markdown should get split. Yeah, there we go. So now we kind of have these things bolded. It also seems like we need to add like an additional kind of spacing. But yeah, but I believe this looks good now. All right, but I think this was it for this video. So I think this was a cool little project to kind of show how you can use Lovable and just to give some tips and tricks on the way. And we will be posting a lot more videos on this channel soon. So stay tuned and bye bye.